Okay, so his style is quite filmic. It has a lot of gloss, so a lot of matte to it. So these curves are going to play a really big role in the terms of capping off those highlights. Alright, welcome to this Lightroom tutorial, everyone. So we are going to be editing this image from scratch and this image, okay? So here's our before, after, and then here's the before and after of this image. So we're trying to recreate a really talented photographer's work. So we'll look at his Instagram really shortly and we'll be able to tell a lot about the colors he uses, the curves he uses just by looking at his Instagram. Let's look at how close we got to recreating the style that we'll go over really shortly. So here's his edit, and then this is going to be our edit from this tutorial. And then we're going to copy and paste these settings. And what is really important when you're trying to learn editing is what adjustments to make, say, after you apply a preset. So we're going to copy these settings from this completed edit and then paste them onto this image. So reset, and we're going to get close to another edit of his, okay? So I'm going to take you guys through that. Okay, so his style is quite filmic. It has a lot of gloss, so a lot of matte to it. So these curves are going to play a really big role in the terms of capping off those highlights. But the gloss is a real mystery to a lot of people. The shine, the matte look, some people refer to it as. He uses that quite a bit. I've done a few tutorials on him before, and you need to understand curves to be able to recreate this style, because the curves are used both in contrast and color. So if you don't understand color theory or you don't understand the curves, you are pretty buggered there. So for example, these are the curves we're going to run through. So he definitely uses a lot of blues, a lot of greens, and then a lot of warm oranges. He will adapt the edit depending on which image suits which colors. Okay, so we've done quite a few tutorials before, and make sure you go give them a follow down in the description. I'll put his links down there, and let's get into recreating this really nice edit here. Okay, so we're turning this one on the right into the one on the left here. So I've got some adjustments already done in the curves, and we'll go over them shortly, but this is what it looks like out of the camera. Like, we will make a really big change, and I've just already got a few curve adjustments done that we'll go over because they are really important for this style. Add contrast and to control color and the matte look that we'll get into. Okay, so where to begin? I do have some curves here already done, so I actually would start with a preset, or there's definitely curves that need to be done. So we'll go over what the curves are doing, but they might not make sense right now because this is our first adjustment. So we've got a wee S curve going on, obviously more greens in the mids, slightly more cyan than green in the shadows, and then there's less blue in the mids, and it's adding in contrast, which is quite important. So as you can see, these are our curve adjustments, but they work in combination with the sliders here. So let's drop the contrast here, up the blacks, and now we're at a pretty good starting point. And you'll notice that we already have that shine to our image that we really want, that matted look to the image. Back down to this curve. So I like working with this curve a lot, and we are gonna drop the highlights here. And I love this curve because it really helps with the matte look a lot of images have. Darks, more contrast, and it affects your image exactly the same as this image. It's just the different control you have. So these sliders are sometimes much nicer to work with than the plotted points. So a big thing that I'll probably touch on a few times is the matted look to a style, the gloss, the finish. A lot of people struggle with that, and it's one of the last things I learnt to do quite well. So I'll refer to that quite a bit, and that is done in the curves here, okay? Right, so bit of a pop. You can see our colors are pretty off. The white balance was maybe way too warm. It obviously has a really strong green tint, but his finished shot has a lot of greens and blues, and his style just does have a lot of greens and blues. And I did spend quite a bit of time just playing around with the adjustments here, so I didn't just go through in one order just nailing every tool. It was a lot of jumping about, balancing. I actually spent a wee while recreating this edit, so it looks to you that I'm just making these adjustments very quickly, but I spent a good while trying to match up the tones and stuff, and I found further on in the edit I needed a white balance closer to the green. Okay, so texture, this is what I would go for, dropping the texture and then bringing up the clarity. It gives a glossy look. I'm going to bring up the dehaze. It has an effect similar to bringing down the highlights, but no one really knows precisely what it does. Okay, and we will do a hint of shadows and drop the highlights a little. Contrast. Blacks up more. I always bring the blacks up because I do so much work adding in contrast with the curves here. Okay, so we're going to come down to luminance. So this is going to play a big role. It quite often plays a role in a lot of his images. And one thing that I haven't mentioned is I have a lot of masks here, and it really brings out the subject off the background. So I'll go over these at the end. Just be aware that like I am, for example, bringing up the exposure of the subject, like that's already done. So if we turn these are the adjustments that are applied right now. So I'll go over them at the end about what each one is actually doing and the reasons for it. So yellow, we just want to pop really to those bright tones. Yellows are those bright tones. Greens want to shine. Blues and aquas, there's not really any in here, but I'll bring them up roughly with the other tones. So the reds is just going to be lips. So we're pretty good for brightness and stuff, and we just have to get the tones pretty good. So we want blue. Greens, just real quick adjustments. I'd go saturation of the greens down, and the yellows. I want way more oranges to the yellows, like the skin tone, so you can see it's affecting a lot of the skin tone. Sometimes yellow doesn't affect a lot of the skin tone, and then oranges, a bit more red, plus down roughly in line. Okay, our tones look pretty off right now. Gotta come back up here, saturation, no, vibrance pretty high and saturation quite high. And then down here I'd get more precise, so down, try to get it perfect. And remember, if you're in the course, you'll have access to this raw image or DNG, so you'll already have the settings, so it'll be much easier for you. You don't actually have to do all this copying settings if that's what you're doing. Okay, so split toning, really important for the style, but it's not like he just has the same split toning photo to photo. Pretty similar, but not completely. The consistent theme is that it's a green or a light blue. So as for shadows, we are gonna go for a greenish blue. You need to understand color if you're doing this. Like when I recreated this edit, I knew how these greenish blues would affect your skin tone, like the in-depth color theory that actually goes on behind Lightroom. You really do need to really understand this sort of stuff. Okay, so midtones, we will go for a blue again, go just a bit, and that's just like, you're not necessarily just trying to affect the skin tones. I'm trying to like add the blue to the green grass in the background while maintaining good skin tones. Okay, so, and then for the highlights, I'm gonna go pretty strong on this greenish tone. So this is split toning on and off. So we're just looking too reddish, too warm. And it's hard to explain in this video, but throughout the edit, I was struggling to get the richness to the hair. Like her hair, her lips, her skin tone just looked really rich. So the way I did that was adding in purple, and then the purple really brought out that redness in her skin tone. but then I lost so much green and this light bluish color that he has to his entire image that looks really, really good. So then I came back into split toning, so I maybe added that purplish tone here pretty strongly. See how red it goes if you go too far with the oranges, with the yellows? So I'm counteracting that a bit with the split toning. I'm just trying to demonstrate the importance of understanding color, because the tools are all very intertwined and affecting each other and stuff like that. So here is the before and after of the split toning here, and then blending is just a little to the right. So then you decide, what do I want to favor more of those highlights or shadows, the adjustments you made. And then what we should have done actually right at the very beginning is enable profile corrections, so that's going to get rid of that vignette. Okay, very quickly, he has a very filmic style, so I'm just going to do a little bit of grain, up the size a bit, and then roughness I'm going to put to 100. I think that gives a nice grain texture similar to his. Okay, whites. And then we're going to come all the way to the bottom. Now, this was with a lot of playing around. I was missing quite a bit of vibrance to the tones he has. So I'm just going to play with this red one and just bring up the saturation a bit. And I think it just gives quite vibrant tones that the image needs. What I haven't shown you at all is all this masking, which is also really important. So let's turn it off and on. So really big factor these brushes are making. So if we just go over what these are doing now, so we have one right on the subject in the middle, just bringing up a few shadows here. So we could delete it and let's bring it back. You can see it just there, it brought up the shoulder, which is really the middle of the image, which is really important to be bright. So we've got this one here, which is all her hair. So I've actually only got the saturation up. I think if we just delete it and watch when I bring it back, the difference it makes just adds a lot of richness to the image. We have her eyes, up the whites a bit to give them a bit more of a pop and shine, and then I brought the temperature down. It just, eyes always seem to have a yellow cast, the whites of your eyes, so I just brought them down a touch in temperature, and the eyes just look very white, more white and natural. Okay, we have this one, which is kind of the entire face, and we just have clarity up by 8. Again, if we delete it and bring it back. Okay, and now we have one just on her face here, just here on her face. If we look what this one's doing, it is contrast up by 10, whites up a bit, and saturation up a bit, just adding vibrance, contrast for a bit more punch. Okay, so next one is the background. I just brought the dehaze down by 10, so watch what happens. Delete it, it's gone. Now watch what happens. It's softened. My goal was to soften it. Okay, so here's just the body and arm, and we've got the saturation up, the shadows up, and exposure. So generally you want to bring up the exposure and contrast of your subject. We have a mask here of the background. We have contrast and whites up. So if we delete it, the background is very interesting, yet it's very flat in this image. So when I press Command Z, you'll see it come back, and it just creates a lot more depth to the image because that background becomes more interesting, more pop. Now we have just the skin here. Looks like we brought the whites up for a bit of pop and brought the clarity down just to really soften out the skin. So again, let's delete it and then bring it back. And you can see that makes a big difference, that one. And then down the bottom here, I don't think I did. So the exposure, the bottom, and shadows are up. So it gives us warm light, it kind of looks like, coming up from the bottom. I think it works well. Let's delete it and then bring it back. And then one more over the entire subject. And we have the whites up and a touch of warmth to the subject. Deleting it, bringing it back. Okay, so this is our image, and then that's his edited JPEG. So if we just go reset, that's the before straight out of camera. Bad tones straight out of camera, and then we've done that. And then if we just come over here and we look exactly at our image and then put his image right on top, and I mean, I'd do a touch more, like maybe the whites need to come down, but I think we're pretty good, pretty similar. What we will do is go copy settings, copy everything. Okay, so here's another edit of his. So here's his one off his Instagram, and then this is just another one. We're gonna paste these settings. Now, I admit it looks quite bad straight away, but if you know what you're doing, we can make some really quick adjustments and get quite close, to be fair. I would go exposure, 'cause it's just too bright. Now, the white balance is too warm. Green is quite close to like warmth, so it's like a giveaway. So we're too green, just bring in a lot of purple. Too much contrast. Highlights, more shadow, more blacks, because if you look at this area, more whites. If we come down to this, I'm just going to brighten the mids quite a bit brighter. So let's drop these yellows. I think we lose a lot of those greens and stuff. Blues. Saturation of the blues. Need to come up. We need to see more of them. And then the tones of all these colors. We want teals. Aquas. And we want our yellows to be more green. We're missing out on so many of those greens that he's gone for. Crop roughly, and then we just maybe like less whites a bit, maybe more whites, but then like maybe this curve we need more of a matte coming in, need way more blues. So maybe in the highlights we swing this more to a blue rather than a green. Less contrast, less whites, less warmth, more blacks, yes, more shadows. And you can see that we're getting there. Like the greens look very, very similar. So luminance of the greens maybe down again. So we're getting kind of close with the greens and stuff, but like you definitely have to come in here and do some filters on the subject and stuff. But I think we've done the main part of this video. You get the idea now. And we're not going to go through the minor details, but you sort of see how we can copy and paste those settings and then put it on another image. If you know what you're doing regarding color, you understand color tools do, like an in-depth understanding of color theory. I actually find this way easier to edit. I actually don't really use presets too much anymore. I use like the guest editors in the course, and so they take us through all the edits, and I copy and paste their settings when I'm trying to edit. And I think it's a way better way to edit than presets, because you know what the image is trying to do, and you know why, say, blue was added to the highlights in this prior image. So just one more filter, because it's really annoying me, just like on the subject especially, and reset that, and then up the exposure, maybe only on the subject. Contrast. Yeah, so you get the picture. We could probably get there pretty quickly, but we'll just leave it there. That's how I like to use the guest editors in the course, or how I edit. I will grab the settings from a different image I already like the edit of, so you never ever delete a well edited image, and then you can copy and paste them and you'll know exactly what you're doing. So that's just annoying me. So more shadows, more matte needs to happen here. That matte is quite strong, but then there's more shadows, and then maybe the saturation down. Yeah, we'll leave it there. It's not perfect, but I just wanted to show you how you can copy and paste those settings and get them across to another edit. So make sure you go give him a follow. His links are down in the description. Really talented photographer he is. And yeah, I'll see you guys next month. I just wanted to jump back in here because it was really annoying me. So what if you got the raw image from over 100 pro photographers, the preset and the lesson on how they edit their images so you could follow along step by step? So click the link and you'll find more information on how to join the #1 editing course designed to give you the exact style you're trying to achieve and to get that style you've always wanted from one of your favorite photographers. So click that link and I'll see you over there and we'll work on getting you to your perfect style.